You're watching the Forefront Church video podcast, and wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. How are we doing today? Wow, you guys are ready to roll, packed house. Before we jump into stuff today, as we start this brand new series, like Tommy mentioned, just please help me in thanking Dan Pollard, our adult ministries pastor, for bringing the message last week. I tell you what, we do not take for granted our amazing staff. They are so good. And it was nice. My wife and I had to, kind of wait a little longer just to go and celebrate our 15-year anniversary. It's almost 6 months late, but yeah, that's fun too. And so, yeah, it's always good to, as much, and this is some free, you get this for free today. If you're a parent in the room, make sure that you get away from your children and you're not their best friend. And so I always tell our girls, I'm like, I love you, but I love your mom more. And they're like, and you may be like, that's harsh. No, because one day they're going to leave. And then you're still there with that person that was there before they came. And so when you're a great husband and wife, you are a much better mom and dad. And so please, please, please get away. I know they're your babies and they will be fine. And so we had a good time, but it's good to be back with you guys. And like Tommy mentioned, we're jumping into a brand new 4-week teaching series called Jesus' Most Confounding Statements. And if you're a Christian in the room, don't ever say the Bible is completely easy to understand and there's nothing weird. Okay, there's a lot of very weird things that are recorded in the Bible, and especially Jesus. When Jesus said some things, it left crowds going, excuse me? It even left his followers, those very close to him, going, Jesus, this is a horrible PR move that you just had. It was the beginnings of the movement of what was then noted as the way that then has now come into what we now know as Christianity in modern day church and this movement. And as they were going across, they would draw tons of crowds because Jesus' reputation was one for healing the sick, causing the blind to see, to helping people that couldn't walk, to then all of a sudden running and leaping, even taking people that were dead and then alive, both spiritually and physically. And people wanted to hear his teaching. They heard about this Middle Eastern Jewish rabbi that had grown up a carpenter's son that now was spreading this amazing movement that was turning the world as we knew it upside down. And so they would come and they would listen. And the disciples, his followers that were learning from him, gathering, they were always like, all right, here it goes. Here, Jesus is going to say this thing, and we're going to get more people following. And then he would open up and he'd say, listen, if you want to follow me, you need to eat my body and drink my blood. Yeah, that reaction of like, huh? And it says in that account that the crowd dispersed. Yeah, I bet. That's not a good church planning tactic. If you want to grow a church, you don't get up and go, so you guys are going to eat my body and we're going to drink. And they go, what? And if you're sitting here going, what have I just walked into? Jesus said, and we're going to look at these, Jesus said some very obscure things. There was another time that he drew a crowd and he looked at them and said, you know what, if you're going to be one of my followers, you need to hate your mother, father, and sister and brother. And all of them go, no, we love our family. Well, some of them. We love our family. Jesus, why would you ask me to do such a thing? And there were these moments that took place where he looked at a crowd as they were hanging on every word of hope. He said, you know what? If you want to enter into my Father's kingdom, you must be born again. And all of the adults listening were going, we sat through biology. We know where babies come from and how that works. And if you don't know, ask a parent, not me. And we know how that happens. Born again, that only happens once, Jesus. What are you talking about? And well, it wasn't without moments where Jesus continued this same line, because Jesus was the ultimate storyteller. And so there was another moment much like that where he had drawn this crowd. And regularly, Jesus would draw a crowd, teach, heal, and then remove himself and move away. But if they had had it during the time, I'm sure that he would have been tagged on the Jerusalem Twitter, and somebody would have put it on IG stories. We've seen Jesus, here he is, and tag him. And the crowd gathered again. And so everyone was waiting, and everyone wanted to hear the teachings of this rabbi, this teacher, that was changing the face of culture, doing something that was absolutely phenomenal, because everything they had known up until that point was rules and regulations and what we can do and what we can't do, and he was teaching something freeing. And so imagine, much like this, everyone's gathered around, and Jesus steps up, and he begins to tell this story. He says, well, I want to tell you about this farmer. And everybody's like, no, we want to know about hope. We want to see another miracle. Come on, Jesus, do another trick. Show us what's going on. He says, well, there was this farmer, and he had some seeds. And he went out into the field, and as he was planting the seed, he was real intentional as he was going out, but there was some that would fall in places that it wasn't supposed to. And some of the seed that he was scattering out fell along the path. And the onlookers are watching, going, Jesus, we wanted hope. You're bringing us farming analogies? What's happening here? He said it fell on the path, and while the birds immediately swooped in, and they ate up the seed. And I imagine if we were there, you'd start to hear the murmur, like, when's he going to get to it then? They didn't have the Bible like we know it compiled. They would just have these writings that would be passed around from place. When's he going to get to the real teaching? Why is he telling us this story? And he says, well, this farmer, as he planted out, some of the seed that he cast was then landing on some soil, but underneath it was pretty rocky. And while it started to grow up, and there was some plants that it wasn't able to get deeply rooted. And because it wasn't deeply rooted, very quickly the sun burned it up because it didn't have enough roots underneath to sustain it. And by now, I imagine you begin to hear the whispers, when's he going to get to the good stuff? Why is he telling us? We know how to farm. We know how to fish. We live in that kind of culture. It would be like somebody walking in, for many of you that are proficient with handheld digital devices and phones, go, here's how I'm going to teach you how to make a phone call. And they go, what? Not most of us use our phones for actual phone calls these days. And so he says, you know what? Actually, the farmer continued on as he was getting the seed out, and he cast some, and it landed on some thorny ground. And while it began to try to take root and come up, the thorny ground began to strangle out and suffocate the plants. I wonder if at this point, people are like, just do another miracle, man. Like, we don't need to know about this. We actually left our fields that we should have been in, doing a lot of work to come listen to you. Get to the point. And then he says, and then he cast some more seed out. And it landed on really good soil. And it began to spring up 5, 10, 75 times the amount, and it was bountiful. And now they're waiting. They're like, okay, we've gotten to at least some type of movement. When is he going to tell us how to follow God? And he goes, those of you who have ears, hear and understand. Period. And imagine the people who had followed him, the disciples, the people who had spent time with him. They're like, this guy doesn't get it. He really needs to hand people something. They're looking for a kingdom. They're looking for amazing things. They're looking for miracles. And over in the New Testament of the Bible, in Matthew chapter 13, if you have a Bible, you could turn over there. If you don't, we give them away for free. And you could stop by in the Get Connected area, pick up a Bible. And man, if you are more digitally inclined, you can head over to our .info page. It's where you can not only have notes, but to ask us questions and connect. And in Matthew 13, the disciples begin to question this rabbi, this teacher, the one that they're following. They said, listen, Jesus, we've been following you a long time, and you've been doing really good, and we've been gathering crowds, but this is a bad move. Just tell them what they need to know. Do what they want. And well, they ask him in verse 10. The disciples came to him and said, and they pulled him away. They didn't want to embarrass him in front of the crowd. Right? They're like, Jesus, you're making a bad move. Like, can you come here? Let's go behind the... Hey, get it together. Why do you speak to these people in parables, in these stories, in these analogies? Why are you doing this? Just tell them what they really want. Give the people what they came for. Do another circus trick, Rabbi. And well, in essence, Jesus says, I already told them what they need to know. But they just don't want to hear it. And when we encounter the story, the movement, the beauty of Jesus, and are you really receptive? See, the question that I ask myself over and over when I encounter this is, what will your reaction be to the gospel? And the gospel is just a simple phrase of the good news, that Jesus came and Jesus gave his life so that you and I could be set free. And there's only one of two responses that happen there. When all of these people in this crowd, the people that heard him say these really weird things, when you and I hear these stories, is will we just kind of pull back and kind of harden our hearts to this, or embrace the message of Jesus? Now, I know over and over and over again, I hear this resounding thing from people. They go, when I ask this question, have you kind of been pulled back from God? Have you pulled back from Jesus? Have you, to use that biblical term, hardened your heart to that, and you're just not receptive? Or do you embrace it? They go, I haven't turned myself off to Jesus. I haven't done that. I didn't harden my heart. That's not what I would do. Actually, my parents went to church, and my parents, when I was in my mom's womb when I was there, I've been a Christian since before I ever entered the world. I've always been Team Jesus. I'm on that. Yay! All right. I'm not going to do that because I'll pull something. Yay! I'm on that. I'm ready to go. Then they go, you know what? While I haven't hardened my heart, I've always been with him. I hear time and time again, he left me. He left me. I've been here. Jesus, where are you at? Where did you go? Where have you been? I have asked for you. I have tried to follow you, and you keep talking in veiled stories and riddles. Get to the point, Jesus. Heal my marriage. Take care of my kids. Get this sickness removed from my body. God, where are you? You left me. Where are you? What have you done? And I've had to come to terms with the moments that I've shook my fist at the sky and got frustrated with God. He's big enough to take it, but his response isn't always what we really desired. And St. Augustine put it this way. He says, remember this, when people choose to withdraw far from a fire, the fire continues to give warmth, but they grow cold. When people choose to withdraw far from light, the light continues to be bright in itself, but they are in darkness. This is also the case when people withdraw from God. Some people want it, some people don't. Some people think they're too good to hear it. I already know everything. I meet people very frequently who say, listen, I know you're a pastor and it's your job to teach us or whatever. I already know everything I need to know about God. And I said, well, can we talk about what Jesus said about arrogance? And we laugh, but pride can well up when we think that we've somehow arrived. None of us have arrived. And the religious leaders of that day thought they knew everything. And many people in the crowds had grown up learning about the law and learning about God, and they thought they had already known. And Jesus comes in with this upside down new way of loving others. And when the disciples go, Jesus, why don't you just tell him? Tell the people what they want, do what they want. Listen to Jesus' response. He replied, because of the knowledge of these secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. Basically says, I've already told you exactly what you needed, but I haven't told them. And they're like, why wouldn't you tell them? It says, whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. They're like, wait a second, so you have, and it's they're confused. They're like, Jesus, did you fall down? Did you hit your head? Like, this doesn't make sense. He goes, this is why I speak to them in parables. And he really drills down. Those seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. You see, Jesus regularly taught in these parables and in these stories not to veil the meaning of what was taking place, but to prompt people to dig deeper. Because people at face value, all throughout time, and God knew this, and men and women have taken the very beautiful, loving, amazing teachings of God and of Jesus and have hijacked it for their own agendas. The very movement, and I love the United States, but the very beginning of our country was, hey, let's go in and hurt indigenous people and take it. And the justification was, hey, back in the Old Testament, God gave some people some land and they got to take it by any means necessary, so we're going to do that too. And there were people that said, you know what? During biblical times, and it wasn't condoned, but during biblical times, people had slaves. And so, you know what? If someone doesn't look like us or act like us, we can enslave them and make them less than because they're different. And they'd say, well, I read it about somebody doing something like that in the Bible, so I'm good. You see, people can use the Bible for all sorts of things. If you want to find it, which is why you can follow Jesus and be a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or a I'm not going to vote person. And you'll find a reason. If you want to dig deep enough, you can make the Bible say whatever you want. And Jesus goes, no, that's not the point. The point is, I want you to dig deep and understand that there is a bigger purpose for what happens, and you could be redeemed and made new. And what I love about the teachings of Jesus, this good news, this gospel, is that the gospel is top shelf atonement with bottom shelf access. Now, for some of you, you may abstain from alcohol, so I want to put this plainly. I'm sure you've never been to a club or a sports pub or a bar, and let me kind of break this down. You may walk in and you may see a line of taps and other things and bottles and whatnot, but then there's always going to be some stuff up a little higher. Some stuff that's way more expensive. And the higher that it's up, the more money you are spending. And this is top shelf stuff, the best of the best. And the people around were expecting miracles and signs and wonders and this amazing teaching. And instead, when they came for this, what they were hoping for was this, Jesus gave them a farming story. They go, Jesus, we're too good for this. But he gives this amazing teaching that is very true, and he broke it down for the disciples. He said, listen, we're going to spread out this amazingly good news. It's some people, it's going to fall, and it's just going to fall flat. Others, they're going to get into it, but they're just going to come, I don't know, maybe go to a small group once, and come on Christmas, and come on Easter, and they're going to expect that I'm going to do great, amazing things, but with no investment to have a relationship. And then they're going to wonder why it all shrivels up. Then there's others who are going to have amazing hurts and pains and things that I can take it away, but they're going to want to coexist with both and never hand it over to me and never surrender those hurts so that I can heal them and overcome them. And they're going to try to make them both coexist, and those hurts and those pains that they try to hold on to are going to strangle out their faith. But then there'll be some who, when that good news hits, they're receptive and they're ready, and it's going to change their life. And the disciples go, well, why didn't you just come out and say that? And he goes, some people don't even want to hear it because they think they already know, but I want to give them some amazing teaching that's simple, that even a child could understand. And when I hear people say, I just want to go deep, I go, man, that's great, and we can have lots of knowledge, but what Jesus was trying to ask through every time he taught was, are you too good to stoop? Are you too good to get down into the dirt of the stories and really sit with a God that would just share these simple things? You see, Jesus taught in layman's terms, and the religious leaders hated it. They're like, why can't you teach in these lofty terms and all these things? He goes, let me tell you about some guys that had some sheep. And there were a bunch of them, but one wandered off. And they went after the one and left the 99. Oh, how dare they run after? Don't they know that those 99 could get hurt and injured, whatever? And he talked about the love that it was about going after one that may have strayed. See, Jesus made it very accessible. Are you too good to stoop down and access these very easy and beautiful teachings of Jesus? You see, this happens all throughout the narrative and story of the Bible. The late Rachel Held Evans put it this way. She said, from walking with Adam and Eve through the Garden of Eden to traveling with the liberated Hebrew slaves in a pillar of cloud and fire. And then she begins to talk about the Jesus himself. It says, to slipping into flesh and eating and laughing and suffering and healing and weeping and dying among us as part of humanity, the God of Scripture, the God of all the universe, stoops and stoops and stoops. The heart of the gospel message is the story of a God who stoops to the point of death on a cross. Dignified or not, believable or not, ours is a God of perpetually on bended knee, doing everything it takes to convince, and this is where it's convicting for me, maybe for you too, stubborn, petulant children, that they are seeing that he sees you and that he loves you. But we want those moments to happen quickly, don't we? We want to swoop into faith and swoop into his church. I want it to happen right now. I can go to a restaurant and get food pretty quickly. There's the person that's making minimum wage in McDonald's can get me a sandwich pretty fast. God, you're the God of all the universe. Make it happen. I can go and send a message to space and across the world in like 0.5 seconds. God, what are you doing? Make it happen. We don't like to wait when he brings us this message of hope and of redemption. And it reminded me of my childhood with these things. You guys who are younger, you have no idea what this is. Because when you get ice, you go to the fridge and you click on a button and it comes out. You don't know the pain that was dealing with these. And I know you're like, okay, boomer, and you do that. And I had a kid tell me that the other day. I'm like, one, I'm not a boomer. Two, I'm like, stop it. You don't even know. And so, but this was a totally different thing. You had to, when you wanted ice, you had to go to the sink and fill up this tray with water. And then you had to walk to the freezer and open it up and shake, and water's now gone everywhere, and put it in. And then you had to go play. And you take off your school clothes, put on your play clothes, and go outside. How long? A long time. Because this has to freeze. Because if you didn't wait long enough and you go to crack it open and then everything, it looks frozen, but it's not. You went too soon and then everything's watered down. Oh, and then you got to start over. Then you wait and it's finally good. But then you go, oh, well, then you just break it and it comes. No. You have to crack this thing. And then the tray would crack. And then mom is angry as all get out. We got to go spend another $1 on an ice tray. I'm sorry. And you do it. Why? We didn't want the gratification. We want it instantly. And now, even if you wanted an ice tray, they make these that are just like bendy and whatever. You put it in there, you wait, and it's done. But you don't have to bleed trying to get ice cubes out anymore. We want it when we want it, and we want it now. Jesus quit talking in veiled references. Give me hope now. Because I already did. but you think you're too good to receive it. You won't even for a moment just get down and see the very meaning of the story, the very meaning of my teaching. You feel like I have to spell it out for you. I want you to dig deep. This is amazing, top shelf beauty with access that's right where you can get it. But you're too good to get down on your knees and really dig into what I've given you. And so he continues with his disciples as he's teaching them. He says, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes and hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. What he's saying is you want what you want, when you want it, how you want it. And if I tell you any differently, you're just going to turn away. And I wonder for us this morning, those of us tuning in online, that maybe for a moment we need to ask ourselves some questions. Because maybe we think we're too lofty, we have a little too much pride and ego. Maybe you have such an awful self-worth picture that you feel like you could never be accepted by the God of all creation. And the first thing that I think that we need to ask ourselves is, do you think you're beyond his teaching? That you've already known enough, or that you're so down in the gutter of life that there's no way the God of all the universe could accept someone like me? I'm way too high and I know it all, or I'm way too low and I'm too awful. I want you to know that you're never too far gone and you're never too prideful to come back to the God of all creation. The light has not gone out. He is there. He always has been and always will be. And I love that we get to promote and talk about these truths, not just during this hour on Sunday, but throughout the 167 hours that we have throughout our week. And we use social media to do this. One of our posts last week shared this very truth from Lecrae, a hip-hop artist. Says, yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I make hypocritical decisions. Yes, I fall, I stumble, I struggle, I'm a mess, but I'm God's mess. And he can turn a mess into a masterpiece. Do you believe it? Or maybe your schedule's too busy to stop and dig in. Maybe we see this, don't we, in culture. We say in the new year, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to do things a little different. I'm going to move up. I'm going to have more margin. And then we don't. And then we see one another. Hey, it's good to see you. Hey, I've been really busy. Hey, I know that and we approach friends. Hey, I want to get their attention, but I know you're really busy. We have people say this to our staff all the time, and they come say, hey, I know you're really busy. I said, actually, we're doing a job, but we have margin, and we're not busy. You're busy, and you're projecting your busyness on me. Don't put that on me. You need to handle your busyness. And they're like, that's not exactly, I wasn't coming for another sermon, but I wanted to talk to you. But we do this, don't we? We're busy, and so we assume everybody else is. The next time you tell somebody, hey, I know you're busy, stop for a moment and go, ooh, I'm actually projecting on them what's happening in my life already. I need to slow down. Are you too busy to dig in and get into the simple story of Jesus? These teachings that are not hard, that you're not too far gone, you're not too above him, that we could all stop and hear what he has to say. You see, the question that I ask myself regularly is, what would it take for you to stoop? See, when I hear the word stoop, I don't think about kneeling down and getting low there. I hear stoop, and growing up, I don't know where you grew up in your vernacular there, but I hear stoop, and I hear sitting down on the front porch on the stoop. Some of you guys who are younger, you're like, I don't know what that means because I'm in my room playing Fortnite. But this right here is where, before Insta, before snapping stories, this is where you would banter, where you'd see each other's outfits and razz one another and take time. And all those things are great, and I love that we use social media. But this was a moment where you would spend time with friends, where you would connect, where you would talk, where there was something about sitting down on that front porch, mainly to get away from my parents because we would say things that were fairly scandalous and didn't want them to hear. And so we'd sit around on the front porch and we'd just talk. And our lives, somehow about that posture, would open up. And we let each other in a different way. What would it take for you to stoop with God? To really just sit with Him? To hear the stories of this Middle Eastern Jewish rabbi who just wants to know your heart, who wants to know that, man, some days you really hurt, and some days you want to hurt yourself. Some days you want to just go out in a rage because you're so frustrated because life is hard. Some days you just want to give up because the pains of what are happening are just so overwhelming, because He wants to sit with you. It's the very nature of this story. Hey, there was a rocky place and a thorny place and a path, but then there was some good soil that when the truth met the stoop, everything changed. You see, it's this top shelf atonement. It's bottom shelf access. It's available to you and I. And if you claim faith, but you haven't really felt that in a while, maybe because you haven't spent some time stooping with God. Maybe that you haven't really dug in because you feel like everything's fine, everything's okay. Maybe for some of you, you're just hearing all this for the first time. You go, that sounds really vulnerable and scary. It is, but it's beautiful. Because when you open yourself up and you get down and really dig in, the seeds that are planted by God in your life will yield some of the most beautiful and vibrant movement that you've ever seen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.